everyone's minds and it's on everyone's lips right now. The Democratic National Convention just concluded last night, and many are excited about the ticket that is Biden and Harris, but people also want to know what are they going to do for everybody, right? Everyone that has been affected by the egregious acts, if you will, and the things that have not come to fruition in the last 4 years with this current administration. And so we're going to have a conversation, and I'm excited to bring in to the combo one of the most incredible women I know. She is a civil rights activist. She is a trans activist. She is a media personality. She has appeared on every major platform across the world, NBC, you name it. She has lent her talents and her much needed voice and has spoken to the masses. Ladies and gentlemen, want to bring in Ashley Marie Preston from Los Angeles, California. Ashley, how you doing?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for being here with me today. And yes, this conversation, first of all, excitement for the Biden Harris ticket.
Are you asking me?
Yeah, yes.
No, not really. But I am aware of the social responsibility to still mobilize people to vote. And there is a difference. And so a lot of the conversations that I've been having during this race has been about just that, about showing up and putting duty before personal interest, because who doesn't want
Right.
their candidate to be the one to win the primary, especially if you truly believe in their policies and plans and the ways in which it can move the country forward. But I think that this is a moment where we can't risk another 4 years of Trump.
Right, right. Well, let's sidebar the Kamala and Joe real quick. Let's talk about what's happened in the last, I would say, 90 days in regards to Black Lives Matter and the intersectionality of the BLM movement and the LGBTQ plus community, because we've seen visually and we've experienced with them with marching and protesting. Yes, Black Lives Matter, but there has also been a, I would say, not as much activity in regards to highlighting LGBTQ plus blackness, mainly women of the trans experience in that movement, in that conversation. I feel like some people feel like when you talk about Black Lives Matter and you enter the LGBTQ plus component into that, support leaves the room. Support exits stage left very quickly. Why do you think that is, and what have been the conversations that you've had, because you speak to thousands about this on a daily? What are the conversations you're having with people you're speaking with, and why do you think that there isn't the same support for the LGBTQ plus community within the Black Lives Matter conversation?
Well, I think that there is that conversation taking place in the Black Lives Matter movement. However, it is such a vast movement that it's impossible to lead the social, mission in every single region of the country, right? Or the world, rather.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this. There is a lack, and this isn't just in the Black community, this is everywhere, because it's in the LGBTQ community, it's in the women's rights movement. There is this lack of understanding on the importance of making liberation intersectional. And so we talk about intersectionality so often, but it was first coined by Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989, and it describes multiple threats of discrimination when an individual's identity overlaps with multiple marginalized groups. And so understanding that we're often socialized to be single issue advocates, the issues that are closest to us, not recognizing that it's all linked together. And so with the LGBTQ community and Black lives, there is a natural marriage of the two movements, because it is actually queer Black women and femmes who are at the helm of the Black Lives Matter movement. And we also know, obviously, that there are Black LGBTQ people who are disproportionately impacted by transphobia, homophobia, and all of these other instances of discrimination.
Discrimination. I'm glad you brought that up, because what people aren't realizing, especially in conversations I've had, look, I am LGBTQ plus, I am not of the trans experience, but in conversations I had with our trans brothers and sisters, discrimination is at the forefront of those conversations. Can you please shine a light on the issues that are facing the trans community right now?
Well, I think it's some of the issues that you see the Black community struggling with, or like brown people. But it's compounded because of gender identity. So I can only use my own experience to really break what that looks like down. So, came out to California, 19 years old, got a job, transitioned on the job, faced discrimination and harassment. This is pre Supreme Court's decision to include LGBTQ workplace protections as an extension of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. So, I was out on my own. They fired me. I lost my apartment. I became homeless. Because of my gender identity, I wasn't able to get into a shelter because their definition of womanhood wasn't in alignment with mine. I was so desperate that I was willing to go to a men's shelter, but obviously they wouldn't have me either. And so, right there in that snapshot, you see the ways in which barriers to access in gainful employment, housing, later for many trans people, there are health disparities that follow.
Right.
There are many who are caught up in the clutches of the prison industrial complex because they're forced to turn to street economy for survival. And so those are things that, while I haven't been impacted by, the health disparities in the prison industrial complex, I still understand how those continue to crush trans lives, more specifically Black trans lives, because we're not just dealing with transphobia, we're also dealing with sexism and racism simultaneously.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting back to the Biden Kamala surprise, and I would say it's a I don't. The reason why I say it's a surprise because it's she Kamala before she gave up her bid for her presidential bid last earlier this year. There was really the conversation about having a woman of color wasn't on the table, right? It was just like it really wasn't a thing, and and I hate to call it a thing because it's been a thing as of late. People are saying that Kamala is the perfect choice because she is black and she is also Asian, and this is what we need because we're all about diversity and inclusion now. But can she do the job? She was really vocal about trans rights last fall. I remember I think it was the CNN town hall where she talked about what she was going to do. What are we hopeful to see with this ticket going forward, especially with her?
I think a lot of people were talking about trans issues, especially in the exploratory portion of their campaign, right?
Right,
Because
right.
you're gonna run, you've already identified which demographics, which parts of the voter base that you're going to go after, right?
Hmm.
I think that most of the concern is around the fact that there hasn't really been acknowledgement of harm. And
Hmm.
so, as someone who is going to vote, no matter what my personal, preference is on this ticket, the truth is that that can't be said for everyone.
Hmm.
And so we can't allow ourselves to get caught up in the should of this whole moment. People should vote, they should care, they should. But we have to get honest about the fact that for some of us in America, whether we have a Joe Biden Harris ticket or a Trump ticket, there's not much difference unless we're actually willing to jump in and dismantle these systems that continue to rob historically disenfranchised communities of their livelihood. And that is a hard truth that the Democratic Party has really had a hard time swallowing, is that we can't sweep people's concerns under the rug. You know what I mean? Even if we feel that it's obnoxious, even if we feel that they should take one for the team, even if the fact of the matter is that, do we want to be right or do we want to be impactful? And the
Right.
best way to be impactful would be for Biden and Harris to try to have a come to Jesus moment, if you will, with these specific communities who have concerns on their heart. And I think that there's a lot of conversation about Kamala Harris, being targeted for being a woman and for being a Black woman. And I feel that in that role, everyone is open for criticism. Like
Hmm.
that's,
Right.
however, it is anti-Blackness and misogynoir if you're applying those criticisms and critique to Kamala Harris and not Joe Biden. Because when we talk about the prison industrial complex and the war on drugs and all of these different ways in which these systems have continued to disenfranchise many of our communities, it's not just Kamala Harris. It's Joe Biden too. And so
Hmm.
again, I think we move forward by acknowledging the harm because we can't heal what we don't reveal.
And acknowledging the harm, you mentioned that. Also, I want to circle back to misogynoir because that's something that me and you've had a conversation about. That's a term that not many people are familiar with. For our audience, can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so misogynoir is earlier we talked about intersectionality, right? And what these experiences look like when identity markers overlap with one another. And misogynoir is just the experiences of sexism and racism simultaneously. And there's even another term that we use too, transmisogynoir, which is sexism, racism, and transphobia simultaneously. So it's the culture. Kamala Harris is the poster woman for what misogynoir can look like, because you have people that have, heavy-handed criticisms that aren't even necessarily applicable to her policies or her
Sure.
or her
Yeah.
record, which you can criticize her on a lot of things, but you see a lot of people who they're just criticizing her. They tone police her, or
Yeah.
all of these attributes and characteristics that had she been a white man who were in that role in the race, she would be celebrated for that. She would be lauded as a leader and a true visionary and assertive, and so we see that misogynoir continues to be an obstacle for women of color running for office. But we also know that there have been a lot of victories, and there
Right.
are a lot of black, indigenous, brown, different. There's a diverse slate of women who are running for these seats and they're winning.
Yeah, agreed, agreed. You know, doing harm, we talk about doing harm outside of our own community, but what I'm realizing, what I'm seeing for myself is how we're not supporting each other within the community. How we're not, there's these different hierarchies and different, I don't want to say class systems. I mean,
But
I, yeah, okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for validating what I know, what I thought all along, but I was like, is it classism? But there is a behavior of I'm better than you. I don't see you because you do not move in the same way I do. You do not walk through the world the way I do. What do you think we need to do to start healing from within as a community? Because it's like, how can we ask for equality? How can we ask for so many wonderful things that we absolutely deserve? We are so deserving of those things, actually, but yet we're so bad to each other. We cannibalize ourselves, and we don't show support for ourselves within our community. What do you think are ways that we can heal that? And I feel like you're the perfect person to talk about that.
I think it's important for us to acknowledge that this imperialist, capitalist, white supremacist, patriarchal society is an equal opportunity destroyer. So if you are not a wealthy, hetero, cis normative white man in America, then the cards are not stacked in your favor. And so you talked about class. And so there's another term that we're using to describe these experiences, and it's class solidarity. So class solidarity will tokenize a black or brown, person of color and use them as the poster child for, see, there's something to see here. How is it racism when we have Candace Owens? How is it racism
Right.
when Gay is
Good point.
saying this? How is it racism? And it's like, because these people have believed that they are able to transcend their blackness, or they're able to transcend their brownness, or they're able to transcend their queerness or their transness, Caitlyn Jenner, all of these different aspects, right? And so the only way that we can truly move forward is if, again, we understand that we can't afford to be single issue voters, but we must be every single issue voters, because
Right.
coalitions are what yield tangible outcomes. And so I think that, it has been disheartening to see, even in the LGBTQ community, white gays sometimes, which I get it. You want to win, you want to beat Trump. Many of them, Biden was actually their first pick for my own friend circle. And so understanding that no one is saying that you can't be excited or you can't be happy or that you shouldn't feel happy, right? It's asking you to take that passion and take that sense of pride and use it to the advantage of those who still feel underrepresented, who still feel silent, who still feel excluded from the conversation.
Right, right. Let's chime in on some comments quickly. We have Livingston Popper who says, "I'm African American. I'll never vote for Biden." Also, Peter Bittner says, "It's great to see you here on Halves." Ashley absolutely is. I'm so glad you're here today. Resources, right? Resources. Now more than ever, there's so many resources that we can use to educate ourselves to be fully abreast on all the issues. I know one of the conversations I've had with people is about the violence against Black trans women. 2019, I think it was close to 30 women of the trans experience that were documented. I'm sure there was many more that were not documented. What
Already.
was
It
that?
was like
What?
in the mid late 20s, but we already
Okay.
surpassed 2020.
Okay.
So more murders, yeah.
Yeah, and so what are some resources that we can go and we can find to get more educated that you recommend that you think that are just incredible? Because there's myriad, there's so many, but ones that are really impactful. What do you think?
I would recommend you follow Black trans women on social media and listen to the experiences that are happening now. To be honest, a lot of that content doesn't exist, and when the content does exist, it's antiquated. Like we're
Yeah.
still stuck on trans 101. Just like we're still stuck on racism 101. Like we don't know what happened with America's dark egregious past with slavery. Like we don't know what workplace discrimination looks like. If your name has X amount of syllables on an application, we know you're not going to get a call back. Like all of those, things that we know to be true, right? And so I think the best way is to start building relationships with us, to actually familiarize yourself, not just with the stories, but the people who are on the front line leading these movements, right? And so I think of, people like Angelica Ross. I think of people like India Moore. I think of people like, Dominique Jackson. I think
Mhm.
about Hope Giselle. I think about there's just way too many brilliant Black trans femmes and women that I can think of. Like way, way, way too many. But the thing is that at the end of the day, we have to again build relationships. We always talk about we know that it's tone deaf to have the Black friend, a Black friend. So why have we not applied that same thought to the trans community and to Black trans women? Like start to build friendships with us, even if you don't understand certain things or you don't, just because it's going to take people humanizing us to get us to move the needle forward toward the social progress that we deserve.
Right. And I think shows like Pose have been, we celebrate Pose, right? Five women of the trans experience, all leading roles. Ryan Murphy, widely distributed, great show, Emmy nominated. I think Pose was probably, at least for my cisgender counterparts, felt like that was the most comfortable they could get with the trans experience. What do you think is the biggest misconception about the trans community?
I think that there's an overconsumption of Black trans pain. I think that we have to talk about the ways in which trauma porn is overconsumed. And, when you do see us on TV, we're having our hearts broken, or we're being murdered, or we're being put down, or we're the butt of a joke, or we're in prison, and so give me a good old rom com with a Black trans woman as a lead, as me and Dr. John Paul were saying the other night. Give me, a storyline in which we're going after the career of our dreams, or that we actually have a storyline and we're not just there for comedic effect, or when we talk about visibility in stories, what is it that we're telling in that story? What is it that we're showing?
Right.
I know India Moore was in a movie called Queen and Slim, and even though the storyline was kind of, it was basically like a trap house or whatever, but the way in which the main guy in the house, India was the apple of his eye. He was obsessed with India and loved her, and I mean, sorry, them in real life, but
Hmm.
but the thing is that India's gender was never questioned. it was never, there wasn't a knee jerk reaction or a flinching moment. Or so I think it's just normalizing trans identity in
Right.
space, and that I think is the best way to socialize us into, regular conversations and representation in media, is not always having to have, people talk about disclosure and like, oh, disclosure is, I wanted more. I'm sorry. I
Right.
just want more because, again, we're telling the same stories with just new faces, but we're constantly making history every single day.
Right, right. The normalization, I could. That's so on the money because much like it's taken years to have gay men be the normalized thing. I remember I went to a general meeting with Bravo, and the woman had asked me, "Tell me about yourself." I said, "Well, I am a black gay male in an interracial relationship with two kids," and she said, "Oh, there's nothing there. That's not a story." And no, which was fine because it was like it was normal for her. It was like, that's it. Okay, well, I mean, what, wow me. And 10, 12 years ago, that would have wowed the shit out of somebody, right? But in 2017, it was just like, okay, well, thanks for coming because we've taken such great strides in normalizing that section of LGBTQ plus reality, right?
I
Was
think the
that?
other piece too is not conflating saviorism with solidarity. And I talk about that so much. So it's not enough to, send your thoughts, send money to these projects.
He
Fund,
says, open your wallets. Open your Jack Burry down here says, open your wallets.
yeah, allow us to, we don't need to be saved. We need the resources to save ourselves. That's what
Right.
empowerment looks like.
Right.
And so I think that, again, when we talk about this, it's no one can tell our stories better than we can. And I think that many creatives and creators, even when they have the best intentions, they lack the cultural analysis to be
Yeah.
able to tell these stories the full justice they deserve. It requires such like a complex, layered, nuanced understanding of how these experiences overlap with one another. And so, to your point, when you were talking about, like, I'm married and I have kids, and the thing is, there was a moment, and this is when I actually stopped writing for like a lot of publications, believe it or not. And I have several friends who are editors. Like, I've been an editor and a contributing editor. And there was one week when Common, Neo, Drake, LeBron James,
Yes.
all of these black men, these beautiful, brilliant black men, were saying these affirming pro-trans messages to their following and including us in projects and all this. And I went to reach out. No one would cover that story.
I remember. Yeah. Yeah.
Let Kanye's mental health act up. Let R. Kelly pop off in Gayle King's face. Let, Lil Duval or Dave Chappelle or whatever, they're beating down my inbox asking me to cover this. So again, America just needs to confront their obsession with black trauma porn. Whether it's through the trans lens or the cis, black lens. At the end of the day, and for those who don't know, cis just means it's short for cisgender, which means same. So it just means that the gender identity that you feel comfortable with is in alignment with the sex you were assigned at birth. So that's
Right.
cisgender. But yeah.
Getting back to politics, I know a lot of people are very excited just on the optics that is the Biden Harris ticket for November. So they're calling it a Hail Mary. They're saying that we cannot have 4 more years of what we've experienced. And I think that also coronavirus has made everyone hypersensitive and a little bit more just like on edge. But I agree. I hope that they are the Avengers assembling to beat Thanos this November because we definitely need change. Ashley, you're busy. You're a TED Talk alumnus. You have appeared everywhere. What are you currently up to these days?
Oh my God, there's so much actually. I actually so I'm trying to think about like which things I can talk about. So like, because there's a lot of NDAs like floating around.
Feel that.
So I'm just doing a thing with Quibi. I'm doing a thing with Netflix. I speaking at university, so like I'll be speaking at Cornell soon. I spoke at Harvard twice. University of Tennessee is coming up. I have been doing panels. Obviously, I'm partnering with. So I launched an organization actually called You Are Essential. It launched amid the COVID-19 pandemic because I'm usually the girl that's on the front line in the trenches shaking it up. But as a girl with a healthy BMI and asthma, I'm at greater risk of contracting COVID. And so
Yeah.
thinking about ways in which I can contribute to this social moment or this moment without putting myself at risk. I was like, I know a lot of people and people who can give money, so how do we make this into something? So You Are Essential actually funds grassroots organizations who are on the front line serving communities who've been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, because what we know is that many of these social conditions existed pre-pandemic, but they've now been compounded
Right.
because of the overlapping race and health pandemic that we're in the middle of. And so it's been an opportunity to partner with other organizers and leaders and mutual aid networks who do this work, because we understand more, especially during this crisis, that we've never really been able to rely on top-down government solutions to remedy the socioeconomic disparity that many of us have faced,
Right.
and so figuring out a way to get the Livingston Poppers, of the world, who's in the comment section, giving them like a voice and an opportunity to, if you're not satisfied with Biden and Harris and all those things, I do hope you vote Livingston. I really do. I get it. But people need to acknowledge the Livingstons. The fact of the matter is that, like, we have very valid concerns, and those concerns aren't being answered. And so while we're waiting, while we're holding them accountable, we also have a social responsibility to build the community, to build the atmosphere, and to create the infrastructure that we would like to see. And that's unfortunate, but we've never been able to rely fully on government. So there's this notion that voting is going to be like a one, it's going to be a fix all. But I think of, Future Khan the other day, who got on the these like a million these amazing sessions called Sunday Sermon on Instagram. If you're not following
Yeah.
Khan, you definitely should be. And one of the things that they use they them pronouns, they were talking about the consolidation of power and why voting is important, because we want to be able to stop the bleeding out of our democracy by allowing the GOP to continue to take up all of these seats and continue to, cover their agenda across the political landscape. And so it's understanding that we're simply just blocking them and taking a stab at power, but voting is not meant to be a one-off or like a fix-all. You just check this box and it's all done. We still have a social responsibility to not only vote, but to keep them accountable and to continue to build the infrastructures in our own backyard so that we
Well,
can see the progress that we've been working for generations.
and that, taking ownership and having the onus being put on us, there's also power in that, Ash. That's where having autonomy over our well-being, that's to galvanize and mobilize and have that be in our grasp. That's very powerful. I would rather say, you know what, look, I got to do it myself, but at least I know it's going to get done right. And at least I know that I'm not putting my well-being in the hands of people who claim to care, but they don't. Because there's nothing more frustrating and also damaging than having the wool pulled over you and like, surprise, we don't give a shit. Excuse my language on Haps, I'm sorry, but I mean, like that. If I can be just as real as possible. So you have a lot of things in the works. You can't talk about. Got some NDAs. But you're a gem. You're seen. You're loved. You're valued. We're so grateful to have you in the community. We're so grateful for your voice, Ashley. Thank you so much for talking with us today here on Haps. And where can they find you on social media?
You can find me at Ashley Marie Preston. Ashley is ASHLEE Marie Preston, and Ashley Emma Preston on Twitter, because I guess my name is too long for Twitter. And then you can also find me on Facebook because I have like an open account.
I love how your Facebook. I have an open Facebook account. Everything else is like you gotta get past the velvet rope. But again, seeing value to love. Ashley Marie Preston, everybody go follow her, and that's gonna do it for us today here on Haps. Until next Friday, we'll see you soon. And Ashley, you take care and all the best.
Thank you.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for our Friday interview here on Hats. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Ashley Marie Preston is an incredible, as you've seen, an incredible activist woman, and just someone who is on the front lines doing the good work, making sure that everyone's voice is heard. She is unwavering in her opinions, she's unwavering in her passion, and she's unwavering in her activism. And there's something to be said about that, and we need more people like that doing the great work. It's been a pleasure to hang out with you guys here today, and I'll see you guys soon here on Haps, the network of now. Until next time, you guys, I'm Jason. See you soon.